a coat that I remember was beige and with dark brown buttons, Bev, my mom had made, and of course stockings and probably black patent leather shoes, but we don't say that. So, let me put that back. Thank you.
Sure.
Are you ready for your next cue?
I am.
All right.
Just give me a hint.
As I recall, it was an old world upbringing. It was structure. Probably for most of us it was like that. So, yeah, back to Canada and before that from France. How was my upbringing probably different from yours if you are not Franco? Well, first of all, food. Our food. And I promise not to talk about boudin. I think somebody knows boudin. Boudin is blood pudding. Very good. Cut up and fried and bacon. So we also, you know, our diet was hardly Weight Watchers. It was, you know, I know even today, tortilla, pork pie, it's not Christmas without pork pie. And we had salt pork and croutons and crepes. And I can remember my father in the morning on toast, you know, salt pork, they would just spread the salt pork and, you know, 3 or 4 eggs, no cholesterol problem. They metabolized it, you know. So that's where my upbringing is probably different from your Anglo-Saxon upbringing. Secondly, religion. If you look up in your thesaurus, Roman Catholic, what are you going to find?
The devout churchgoers.
Catholic, Roman Catholic. Not exactly the way we rehearsed it.
Give me more of a lead.
The religion, you know, seriously, most Franco-Americans were Roman Catholics, so maybe you were not, and that's fine. The language. My father and mother had a strict rule in our house, and I thank God for it today. Dans la maison, nous parlons français. In the house, you speak French. And if you think as you know, there was no kindergarten when I was young. I'm 85 years old. But if you think you enter the 1st grade and you don't learn to speak English pretty damn fast, you're living on another planet, believe me, because you do. And I have traveled, you know, my bucket list is blank. I have traveled the world. I have been to 5 continents. I have done so many things because of my blessed health, that this French, I mean, if you know French and English, you know, and I know what you're thinking. Today it's probably more Spanish and English, and I avow that. But I remember as a child, I was telling somebody at our table that in Sanford as well as in Lewiston, if you were bilingual and you wanted to work in a store at PEX, I remember PEX, it was very much an asset. So language was like that. And then our music. You know, we had fiddles and accordions and spoons and bones and jaw harps and jigs and all like that, you know. And let me just make a barroom generalization. That, like most Western Europeans, we French people, we Franco people, Spanish, the Italians in particular, we love partying. We love life. I can almost tell a Franco-American when I meet a Franco-American. We are huggers, you know. We are not reserved like other people, like Anglo-Saxons might be. Very quiet and remote, you know. I remember my husband came home from the service and to his family, and it was like he had gone out to buy a bread. And he came to my house, and my father hugged him, and you know, the culture is like that, for better or for worse. We are joyful, 2 Kleenex movie people. But I will say that our values are probably very, very much like yours, with a little bit of nuance. And why do I say that? Antioch University made a study conducted a study. Results indicated that Franco-Americans ranked or prioritized values in the following order. What was the first value?
Family.
Work. Work. Work, then family, then benevolence, then self-direction. So that was certainly true in my family. Lazy and dirty, no way. So to summarize it, I wrote it to document the bravery of my grandparents and to document the old world culture they cherished and they transmitted to us. Admittedly, as I said, this book is generational. David, are you the photographer?
Yeah.
Oh, what I just want to know if the blueberry pie is on my teeth. If it is, Antioch University study, that was certainly true. So to summarize, to document my grandparents' bravery and the old world culture that they brought us up in. The book is generational. You or your parents or someone you know has lived this book. Change the ethnicity, change the menus, and you will see that you'll find great identification. As I was writing this book, I was concerned, politically speaking, given the tempestuous arguments in this country about immigration, I had to be very sure that the readers knew I had been presenting this material all over southern Maine and New Hampshire for a dozen years. And that I was not writing a manual about, well, this is how you immigrate. You learn the language. You obey the laws. You pay your tax. This is a memoir. This is my memoir. It is not a manual about how you immigrate to this country. I later discovered there was a third reason, subconsciously or even unconsciously, why I wrote this book. And it took a while for me to realize it. It's a nudge to Franco-Americans to take pride in their rich heritage. I don't aspire to speak Parisian French. People say, oh, you got Biddeford French or Sanford. No. And you probably don't sound like London Anglo-Saxons either. So, we are who we are. So be a proud Franco-American. Here is my thesis. We did not lose our culture. We joyfully forfeited our culture for the American dream. What a great barter it was. As a result, it's understood that the more orthodox Franco culture would become diluted. Of course, diluted, D-I-L-U-D. Diluted. But, assimilation need not mean repudiation, Often, my job at the university, I was a director of an off-campus center. Like the Lewiston Auburn Center is bigger than my center in Sanford, but it was feeder system to USM. And when we got busy, I would advise, and I'd speak to prospective students about college. And I could hear that there was a Franco accent there. And so after a while, when I got comfortable, I'd say, would it be more comfortable? Do you speak? Oh, no, a little bit. There's a prejudice still to being of French extraction. And let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. And this, I'm stealing other people's papers. You don't mind if I steal papers? The Constitution? It's a 1984 story, but it's worth telling about prejudice. In 1984, I had been with the university a number of years and said, may I go on sabbatical? Of course you may go on sabbatical. Well, what would you like to do? I would like to go to a certain television station, which will remain anonymous tonight, and just see, because I love writing and creative stuff and everything, and it was a great experience. So we'd get up in the morning and we would get into a vehicle, and the driver is always, as my French mother would say, photographer. And and I'm going to say a name, the reporter, the Kim Block, Cindy Williams person is the passenger in the front, and I'd be in the back. And so we're going on a shoot. So this time we were going to Belfast because there's a chicken farm there.
Used to be.
There wasn't.
Yeah. There was?
The processing
Was.
So we're going there for a shoot because there's been some event. And so we're taking the main turnpike from Portland, and right up here we take Route 4, am I correct, to go to Belfast. And as we come down Route 4, I hear one of them out front say to the other, "Look at the color of those houses." Well, what do you expect? You know these frogs that live around here? And they go on, and they don't know Lorraine my middle name. I don't use it very often. I use it tonight because it's glamorous, Franco. So they know just Lorraine Mashur. And so, dumb are they? Well, what do you expect, you know, when you sleep with your sister this many years, it starts coming out in your pores, and then the color, I don't remember that the houses were that, you know, awful, and they go on and on, coming down on Route 4. I'll never forget it, it was there. I have told this story to every, I was going to say class, every group that I've addressed. All of a sudden, and I can't remember if it was he or she, said, "Wait a minute, we don't know what Lorraine is." We don't know what Lorraine is. And again, I would be lying if I were telling you exactly what I said, but I know I said something about, I am Franco-American. I was born right here. By this time, we must have been in Lewiston or something. And you know, I like to think that my people would not condemn a whole group of people in prejudice like this. Oh, it's very astute. I'm such a modest person. Anyways, we went on the shoot, and you never saw an intern so well treated. You know? How do you like this shot, Lorraine? So, I mean, they didn't know, really. I could have gone, you know, Portland Press Herald here, letter to the editor, or whatever. Of course, no, I didn't do that, but I will never forget the prejudice, and that there is still remnant of that prejudice. You know, so the other thing that I don't tolerate, and I wish you would not, I don't care what ethnicity you are. Pardon my French, which is usually followed by a curse word. You know, French is such a beautiful language. Most of our language in English comes from German. It's quite guttural. Spanish is beautiful. French is so beautiful. And allow me, recall midnight mass, Christmas, and when at midnight there would be a tenor who would intone "Minuit chrétien," Christians, it is midnight. It is the solemn hour when God, quand l'homme Dieu descendit jusqu'à nous. It would take 30 words to say that, jusqu'à nous in English. And it's a very melodic language. So, pardon my French, I don't think so. And I'm quick to say that's not French, you know. I was asked by a reporter, Tammy Wells of the Journal Tribune, what my favorite story is in the book. And my favorite story is a fun story, really. My mom. My mom went to the 5th grade, and she knew her Rodgers and Hammerstein, but she did not always pronounce words the way that we would pronounce them. First of all, my two parents read the Portland paper every day. I wish my college students would have been that aware and that dedicated. And so my mom might have said Seiko instead of Socko, and she might have said Worcester instead of Worcester. Right. So one day we were, she pronounced it the way they looked on paper. Sure. So we're at dinner, we'll call it supper too. I love that when somebody said that tonight. It's supper. Yeah. We were at supper, and my father, who owned a shoe store by this time, started talking about this attractive woman that had come to the store. Excuse me. And so we listened to a paragraph of that, and then after that, we listened to another paragraph about the attractive woman that had come to the store. And it was then that my mother turned around and said, you know, your father thinks he's a Don Joanne. Oh my God. This is the same woman who told my teenage son that meme don't believe in premental sex. My parents, thanks for inviting me, Beverly. My parents were staunch Democrats, probably like your parents. You know, Roosevelt was such a hero to them, and appropriately so. You know, anyways, I must have been 42 years old before I realized that Hoover's first name, did you know, was not Moody. Moody Hoover, and then the loveliest story in my book is my mom and her siblings going to court as adults to become citizens. I believe the judge's name was Delahanty. Is that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. With great trepidation, now they're studying. What's going on? With great trepidation, they were studying this manual. This is in a language that they don't understand. How do you become a citizen? You know, and my mother was not even interested in this enterprise, except that my father said, you know what could happen? We could go to war with Canada. Canada would have to have a defense. Canada would have to have a defense budget, right? And they would kick you out, you know, and I'd stay with Lorraine, la petite. So she went with her, you know, with her siblings, and they would quiz each other. You know, who's the Secretary of State? Why are there 13 stripes in the flag? And they were so nervous about going in front of, you know, these people, again, back to education. If the government had said, you owe us $3 million, they would have, well, they'd probably go back to the agrarian way of life.